Katie is in Ellesmere Port in Cheshire. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Delighted with today's news.
Yeah, so tell me why you're delighted. Why specifically you are delighted.
OK, so I run the National Leasehold Campaign, which has over 23,000 members on Facebook. We have spent the last 5 years campaigning to bring around these leasehold reforms and to get justice for leaseholders. So we really welcome today's announcement.
Because it exposes the inherent unfairness that has been perpetrated on a lot of people.
Leasehold is absolutely toxic. We don't need leasehold in this country. We don't need it in England or Wales. We are the only country, England and Wales, that have this ridiculous feudal leasehold system still in existence. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, and we need to move away from it into a Commonhold system.
Is that true? It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, but in England and Wales? Wow.
England and Wales. We are hanging on to it because it makes the developers, it makes the freeholders money. We are being used as cash cows, and people are allowing this to continue because it's always been that way. It doesn't have to be. It does not have to be that way, and we will change it because it has to be changed.
Well, I was going to say, if it weren't needing massive radical reform to start with, the whole cladding scandal has shown that it's got to be completely redone, doesn't it?
If nothing else, I mean, the horrendous situation that millions of leaseholders stuck in unsafe buildings has highlighted is how unfair and stacked against leaseholders this whole system is. Why should they have to pay ridiculous amounts of money for waking watches, for missing fire breaks, for something that they never had no control over building, and something that ultimately they don't own? Now, leaseholders don't own the land and they don't own the property. So you only own the lease, which allows you to occupy for that set duration, and that's the same for houses as it is for flats. Yeah. So it's not ownership. It's a false advertisement.
Well, quite. So the idea of a mortgage in that scenario feels odd.
Well, yes.
If you don't own it.
I personally bought what I thought was a leasehold house. But actually, now I realise 5 years down the line that actually I don't own it. I didn't own my property. The freeholder owned it, and I was subject to all these restrictive covenants and clauses that they can use against you, and they do use against you.
What were you paying your mortgage for? You were paying your mortgage off because you'd taken the money out from the bank to afford the property in the first place.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, but you don't ultimately own the property, and if you default on your lease, then they can forfeit your property. They will take it away from you, and even if your property's gone up in value, you won't see that. That goes to the freeholder, which is the ultimate owner.
It does sound pretty feudal, but presumably it's cheaper.
Unfortunately not. That people think that leasehold houses were actually cheaper than freehold, but that is categorically not true. I bought a leasehold house in the northwest, and when I bought about 7 years ago, there was no other there was no other brand new houses that were not leasehold.
No,
there was no consumer choice. That was just something that developers thought, hey up, we can make a lot of more money from selling two assets, the land and the property separately. And actually, I use the government to help to buy, to help me to buy a property that ultimately I leased. So the whole thing is just, it's been fueled by government help to buy, the fact that it's rolled over from flats to houses. And, and then they took it one step too far. They got so greedy that developers such as Taylor Wimpey, who were the worst culprits for creating doubling ground rents, and they've been found out. Yeah. And, this announcement today for the CMA, they haven't voluntarily agreed to anything. They've had their arms been tied behind their back. They had to make that announcement today because the CMA were willing to take enforcement action through the courts, and obviously they wouldn't want a legal precedent to be set. Of course they wouldn't.
So I mentioned, Katie, just at the end of the last call there about the possibility of leaseholders introducing ridiculous payments for insurance for this, that and the other. I've got a text here saying, Tom, our block of 12 leasehold flats has an annual charge of £180 for a terrorist tax. What's that all about, especially when we are in a quiet suburban area in the south?
We hear some awful stories currently on people's service charge breakdowns, which you're extremely lucky if you do get a breakdown because there's absolutely no transparency to these fees. Then we're seeing things like COVID costs. What is a COVID cost? They're adding all these really ridiculous fees onto it, and actually, you don't really know. There's no transparency. Service charges is a huge racket. Yeah. And government will need to clamp down on service charges because, it's literally it's totally unregulated, and they absolutely need to get rid of this leasehold system. I've been quite fortunate where I actually have been appointed to sit on the government's Commonhold Council. Right. So I'm working with the government to actually bring in the Commonhold system and to make it actually work in this country so that we can have true home ownership and control. And is that with Gove's department? Pardon?
Is that with Gove's department?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Well, listen, Katie, let us know how you get on. I'd be fascinated to hear what that's like because those processes can be pretty tricky and get very political very quickly. Good to speak to you. Katie, who is called the programme and is the National Leasehold Campaign Manager. So if you've got the problems, you can check their Facebook page out because you won't be alone by the sounds of it. Absolutely unbelievable that. I get this text here. Tom, the Duke of Westminster, the Queen and the Earl of Cadogan are still London's top landowners, holding nearly 700 acres of central London land between them. I work for a large banking organisation. Oh, hello. If it's not paid, the mortgage company pays it and add it onto your balance. 03456060973. Loads of you want to get on tonight. We'll come to more of your calls in just a moment.